The Queen of Variety, the inimitable Carol Burnett. Early on, several television gurus had informed Carol Burnett she was simply too loud and too big to make it as a TV comedian. Fortunately, she was soon able to prove them wrong by popping in on millions of Americans every week during the run of the popular Garry Moore Show. If their little TV screens had two-way vision, her tiny black and white character could have peered back at those fans. She would have seen typically staid bankers, librarians, and school teachers, all wiping away tears of laughter over her goofball expressions and slapstick antics. The rave reviews and shining Emmy awards she garnered during the show's run helped to quell the critics of her incomparable, brash comedic style. Now, though, the naysayers were back again, this time to squelch her dream of stepping into the spotlight as a variety show host. That position, they informed her, was a man's game. Although Dinah Shore had cracked open the door a decade before, the popular variety show hosts of the day, like Ed Sullivan, Sid Caesar, Dean Martin, and the rest, all had one thing in common. They were men. The CBS executives had no problem with giving Carol her own show. After all, she was hilarious, and the contract she had signed with them included a push-the-button stipulation. If within 5 years of signing she wanted her own show, she simply had to push the button by asking for it. After the Garry Moore Show wrapped up, she decided to take them up on the offer. Great, they responded. They had a situation comedy called Here's Agnes that would be ideal for her. She appreciated their enthusiasm, but a situation comedy had never been Carol's dream. She had always enjoyed variety shows when she was young, and had loved being part of Moore's program. There was just something about the variety format that fit her perfectly. It was time, she concluded, to stand her ground against the CBS suits. Somehow she had to get them to share her vision of a successful intruder into the man's game of variety hosts. Her gentle but firm confrontation likely left the network executives wondering what had just happened. Although they had previously stood firmly behind their men-only criteria, they found themselves offering Carol a contract to produce 30 one-hour episodes of her very own variety show. Not only that, but they ended up giving her nearly total control over the production. What had happened, incidentally, was that they had just encountered the incomparable gust of charm, fortitude, humor, and insight that would blast through the next decade like a comedic hurricane. Carol Burnett. The first puff of that future humorous storm stirred when Carol was in the 2nd grade. She invented an imaginary twin sister she named Karen. Soon, young Carol decided to introduce her to the neighbors. Carol would make an appearance as Karen, then step inside their house and frantically change clothes to reappear through another door as herself. She enjoyed the ruse for a while, but as Carol later recalled, I became exhausted and Karen mysteriously disappeared. The laugh she secretly relished helped to momentarily brighten a childhood too often cast in shadows by the alcoholism of both her mother and father. Predictably, her parents' relationship soon collapsed. Following their legal separation when Carol was 8, she was raised by her maternal grandmother in a small studio apartment in Hollywood. Her grandmother, Mabel, or Nanny, as Carol would always call her, was a loving and feisty character who instilled a love of movies in her granddaughter by taking her to see their silver-screened heroes almost every night. They became very close, and Nanny developed a little secret signal to remind Carol she loved her, even when they were out with other people. She gave a little tug on her left ear. Many years later, this ear tug would become a clandestine signal back to her of Carol's love, given at the end of every Carol Burnett show. Another signature element of the show, the Tarzan yell, also traces back to her childhood. As early as 9, she began to rattle the walls with her version of the Jungle Man's unique communication technique. Many years later, this rare skill would not only send viewers into fits of laughter, but would once get her out of trouble, then plunge her into even deeper trouble. She was running late for a rehearsal in New York and realized she needed to buy a pair of stockings. Quickly stepping inside the posh Bergdorf Goodman department store, she selected a pair and headed toward the register. Along the way, a sales lady recognized her and asked for autographs for her 5 grandchildren. Despite her hurry, Carol graciously complied. When she arrived at the register, Carol realized she had put the wrong wallet in her purse and didn't have her credit cards or identification. She did have a checkbook and asked the same sales lady if she could write a check. Obviously, she recognized Carol since she had previously asked for autographs, but she nervously informed her that store policy required a picture ID. Sheepishly, she summoned the manager to see what to do. Taking advantage of an opportunity, the manager recognized Carol, but firmly declared that the only way they could be sure of her identity was if she would do the Tarzan yell. Playing along with the gag, Carol reared back and let her fly. Suddenly, the door behind the manager flew open to reveal a security guard with his gun drawn. Now, Carol reflected with a twinkle in her eye, I only do the yell in controlled circumstances. Carol's love of movies, which Nanny helped ignite, led to one of her first jobs, that of an usherette at Hollywood's Warner Brothers Theater. Her position, however, wasn't long-lasting. When a couple arrived 5 minutes before the surprise ending of Alfred Hitchcock's Strangers on a Train, Carol asked them to wait until the movie was over to avoid spoiling the suspense for them. They insisted, however, on being seated. Seeing his new usherette resisting their entry into the theater, the manager strode forward and not only fired Carol, but unceremoniously ripped the epaulets from her uniform to emphasize his point. Years later, when Carol was given a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, she asked that it be placed directly in front of the old Warner Brothers Theater in order to belatedly emphasize her point. The years of wonderful acting that led to that star might not have transpired if it weren't for an academic requirement that Carol wasn't exactly happy about. Writing was actually her goal, likely because of her mother's job as an unsuccessful movie studio publicity writer before the alcohol took control. Carol enrolled at the University of California in Los Angeles, majoring first in journalism, then in theater arts and English. One of the requirements of entering a playwright program at the college was to attend an acting workshop. She reluctantly enrolled in the workshop, but soon fell in love with the acting profession. After getting laughs during her first performance, Carol was hooked. All of a sudden, after so much coldness and emptiness in my life, she would later recall, I knew the sensation of all that warmth wrapping around me. During the decades to follow, she would wrap her own warmth around millions of admirers. As those fans later summoned mental images of their hilarious hero, they also beckoned visions of Wanda Wiggins, the waddling, blissfully inept secretary, and Eunice, the world-class whiner in her ratty old flower-print dress. And as smiles spread across their faces, they could vividly picture Carol's Scarlett O'Hara character, standing straight-faced in her homemade gown made of curtains, complete with a huge curtain rod stretching out across her shoulders.